which is going, and we are recording. Okay, welcome. Good afternoon. My name is Nicole Steves. I will be the moderator for this session. Before we begin, we have a few reminders. We have a code of conduct that we will adhere to for this conference. I'm going to post a link in the chat for reporting about the code of conduct. And if you experience any issues related to conduct, please contact us via email at galeconferencesupport@googlegroups.com. And I will post that in the chat now. Please be sure your microphone is muted. You can enter your questions into the Q&A, and each lightning round participant will answer their Q&A questions during their 15-minute session. The Q&A for each lightning talk must be within the talk's 15-minute maximum and will occur at the end. We will strictly uphold the 15-minute maximum for each lightning talk so that each presenter has time for their full allotted time. This session is being recorded and live streamed. You can enable captions by clicking on the Show Captions button at the bottom of the screen. Today's presenters are Bethany Mickle and Meredith Walnick from the University of Virginia, Brian J. Sajecki from the University at Buffalo, and Dawn Amsbury from Penn State. Their talks will be on Scaffolded AI Exploration, a 10-step challenge for learners, Between Convenience and Credibility, Student Trust in AI for Research, and Incorporating AI Literacy into Library Instruction. Please join me in welcoming Bethany, Meredith, Brian, and Dawn. And first presenters, your 15 minutes starts now.
Thank you, Nicole. I appreciate that. Hi, everyone. Bethany and I are going to go first. She will share the screen, or perhaps is. There it is. Bethany will share the screen and we'll get started. Welcome to our talk, the 10-Step AI Challenge. I'm Meredith Walnick. I'm the Director of Teaching and Learning and the Robertson Media Center. And I'm joined by my co-presenter, Bethany Mickle, who's the Instructional Design and OER Librarian. And we're coming to you from the University of Virginia, as you can see, where we also both serve a role on the AI Literacy in Action Lab, a collaboration between the library and the College of Arts and Sciences. We'll be discussing a guide we created to facilitate learning by doing with AI. We recognize that AI is everywhere, and our students, faculty, and staff are all coming in with a different set of knowledge and experiences. And this guide is a response to that environment. We've included a QR code and links throughout the presentation. They all go to the guide itself, so you can review it independently. If you miss the QR code or the link, don't worry, it will show back up on an upcoming slide, and then we'll have some example slides if you're more of a listener at this point. Hold on just a second. There we go. AI tools are everywhere on our campus, but our learners lack structured ways to engage with the tools critically. In particular, we found that ethics and responsibility were often overlooked when students and faculty were experimenting without some kind of guidance. Even as tools become more ever-present, the barrier to successful entry remains high for learners new to generative AI. So as their peers, whether they're students or faculty, get more experience, the gap widens and it feels harder to tackle for new users. In response, we wanted to create a resource for anyone to use that didn't depend on having a skilled instructor available to offer formal classes. The 10-Step Challenge is a modular, openly licensed resource that we've been developing at our library. This guide is designed to stand alone from any kind of course and has 10 scaffolded, hands-on activities designed for learners new to generative AI. It's self-paced, and it's built with critical thinking and ethical reflection at the very core. We were inspired by the original resource, so if you've seen it before, you recognize it. It was designed by Anne Grant at Clemson University, and she granted permission for us to adapt it for our university. There's that QR code and link if you'd like to look again at the actual guide. So for a quick visual tour, just so you have a sense of what you're looking at, the guide is organized into very transparently 10 steps, as you can see on this slide. Each step is self-contained and they can be completed in any order, so one does not have to rely on another. Every step follows the same four-part arc. So there's a learn facet, which is a brief background on essential information related to that step. Challenge, which is a step-by-step guided practice designed using free tools. Reflect, which raises key considerations around the use of generative AI in that area. And learn more, which provides 1 to 3 additional readings, videos, or resources to follow up on. And in a future slide, we'll have an example to show you. So if you're following the slides rather than the site. Once we received permission to use Clemson's terrific grounding as a starting point, we leaned on our AI literacy framework developed by UVA Library Dean Leo Lowe. The link is at the bottom of this slide, and Bethany will pop it into the chat. We focused on 3 areas of the framework. Understanding is the first one. We wanted even the most novice user to be able to develop an understanding of how generative AI could accomplish the task in that step or share foundational knowledge. Evaluation. We tried to ensure that users could be confident they understood what considerations to take into account when determining if the output was accurate and reliable. And then responsible use. Critically, we wanted to fold ethics, attribution, and integrity in wherever we could. Using the 10-step challenge in this way makes the framework actionable for educators and learners, not abstract. So they go hand in hand. Now I'm going to hand it over to Bethany, and she will talk about the pedagogical decisions and show you the guide itself.
Thanks so much, Meredith. Hi, everybody. So every design choice that we made in this challenge was very intentional. It was based in solid pedagogical framing. There's a low barrier to entry, for example. You don't need prior experience to get started because we wanted this to be accessible for people who have varying degrees of familiarity with Gen AI. We also made sure that tool exploration was not prescriptive, and we're not telling you what tool to use, and we're careful to note that we're not endorsing the tools themselves. Instead, we give you options so you can explore what actually fits your discipline and your comfort level. For our UVA users, we signpost to the university technology page that outlines institutional licenses. And this is an important consideration for faculty who may assign part of the challenge, since these tools offer provisions to safeguard student data. Another intentional decision was making sure that reflection isn't an afterthought, but baked in and purpose-driven. Every single step asks you to pause and think critically about what you just did and why it actually matters. And finally, we were intentional about providing different ways to learn. We included readings, videos, podcast recommendations, and other avenues for exploration because we know that learning, especially in this type of an exploratory setting, is not one size fits all. Beyond the pedagogy, we also made some deliberate and structural decisions. The whole challenge, for example, is released under a CC by NC 4.0 license, and this means that you can take this content and adapt or reuse it with attribution within your own institution, as long as it's not for monetary gain. Sorry, just realized sharing the wrong slide there. As we already mentioned, we were incredibly grateful for the foundational work of Anne Grant at Clemson University and the fact that their challenge was released under a license that allowed us to make modifications for our setting. This approach means that the content is shared and it's not just siloed. Therefore, we're aligning with our ethos of openness. And the challenge is library-led. Because of the library, it's very often sort of the hub and the center of discipline neutral work. We wanted to make sure we were able to develop something that had a wide scope and that wasn't just focused on one discipline. The structure of each step is also incremental by design. We don't throw you in at the deep end. We try not to do that. Each portion of the step builds more complexity and confidence from surface information through hands-on practice to thoughtful reflection and an opportunity to dive deeper. It's also designed to be learner-driven. Where you start or how fast you move is dependent on your interest and your comfort, and the steps can be followed in any order that you want. Again, we're careful not to be very prescriptive with this. And as Meredith mentioned, we placed ethics as step number 10, not to dismiss its importance, but rather to emphasize it as a culminating reminder that while baked into each step, ethical decisions underpin all user interactions. So we'll transition to what the guide looks like given our very limited time. We're opting for screenshots, but please feel free to navigate to the challenge itself. This is the introductory page for one of the steps, and it sets the stage and provides some context. We kept it intentionally short as an invitation for examination through hands-on exploration. The challenge moves to the engagement portion from concept to actual application. Theory and supposition around what a tool can potentially do is one thing. However, using it is actually a different experience altogether. In this example, for instance, we're featuring step 6, which is AI and discipline-specific tools. You're asked to select a tool relevant to your discipline. So for instance, a humanist and a STEM major may land in very different spaces, and that's okay, and it's actually encouraged. Going beyond just reading a description of what the tool can do, we're asking you to open it, to click through it, and to run the prompt. And that hands-on work is what makes the next part possible. You start thinking about how this tool might fit into your own research or coursework. It's that difference between knowing that a tool can do something and knowing whether it's actually useful, where this guide and this challenge really is emphasized. All of this leads us onwards to the reflection piece. And in all honesty, reflection is at the heart of the entire challenge. We've all tried things and thought it was fun, or maybe that didn't quite work for us. And the reflection asks you to actually pause and sit with the experience and ask yourself some pretty pointed questions like, what did it do? What didn't it do? And how is this actually applicable? Is it applicable to my work? And finally, for those wanting to learn more, we've provided a deeper dive into each of the steps through articles and blogs, videos, podcasts, and they all allow you to explore each topic in a little bit more detail. Next, Meredith is going to walk us through to the end by talking about where we're headed with this work.
So we've made a few changes since we created our version of the guide a couple of years ago. So for example, we've updated the guide as our institutional licenses have changed. We wanted to be sure to refer students to free tools when possible, or tools that the university has negotiated access to, as well as having them be aware of data privacy implications when they're using non-institutional accounts. We also changed step 1 from the original that was at Clemson, from a definition-based step titled "What is AI?" to a more personal AI in You that discusses how generative AI is woven into our lives. In the future, we'd like to add some additional scaffolding for instructor and course integration, and we're also in the process of developing some short video introductions to each step. Each video will be under 5 minutes and is designed to enhance engagement and lower the entry barrier. We're also trying to disseminate the guide a bit more broadly, so please take this as an open invitation for you at your institution to adopt and adapt. So I see we have one question in the chat, which we'll get to. Thank you so much for attending our talk today, the first lightning talk of the conference. We invite your questions and conversation going forward. So you are welcome to contact us directly. Our emails are right there on the slide. And Bethany will pop the link to the guide once more into the chat. Bethany, if you could use the link, the full link, it seems to be working better for some folks. And we have time for just a couple of questions, and I promise we will adhere. So I'll take the first one, and that's from David asking us, can you tell us anything about the uptake of the challenge? Any statistics on its use? I'll tell you two things about that. One is that the faculty that we've shared it with have said that it's great and they love being able to give their students a bite-sized chunk to tackle. So in some of our writing courses, the writing faculty have used the writing step to have their students tackle that, or they've just used like the ethics portion to drill down on that bit of information. From our library side, we experienced a bit more feedback about prioritizing the ethics and critical thinking parts of this guide forward. So it certainly wasn't a universal like celebration that this is the best thing ever, but I think widely understood that it was working. So as far as statistics go, we don't have any to share at this time, but I think once we combine it with the videos, that is when we look forward to being able to say like, here are the hits, these tabs are most successful, that kind of stuff. But anecdotally, positive from faculty and students. And yes, Jenny, it can be used by anybody. So it's just an open resource. That's part of the reason why we don't have anything beyond like hits on the page is because people can stumble onto it. It's widely linked on all of our AI resources, and we share it with any faculty who are participating in our AI labs. So whoever they share it with, they could be using it as well. So it's just like free for all. Last question.
Got about 70 seconds left. I'll ask a quick question before we move on to Brian. So I work at a public library. Can you imagine this being applicable in a public library environment as well?
Absolutely. I think the beauty of this, and again, giving credit back to Anne's work at Clemson, that it was created in such a way that it can be easily adapted and modified, so that you could replace examples with, instead of coursework, it could be application to day-to-day activities, that isn't, necessarily academically, driven. And it could be adapted. And again, the idea is that people can enter from different, levels of comfort with the topics and really engage. Ours was clearly created, sort of for that undergraduate, demographic. It could be used for grad students, but that adaptability is really, I think, the strength of it to take and modify. And we'd love if you take it, do something with it to see, what you do in a public library setting. So yeah,
Amazing.
absolutely.
All right. Thank you so much for that wonderful presentation. And lightning talk means it's fast. So let's move on to Brian. Brian, your 15 minutes starts now.
Hello, can everybody hear me and see my screen? Do we have a yes?
Yes.
Awesome, cool. Hi, so thank you for tuning in. That was really great. I actually plan on digging through that guide because it seems very helpful. So I would definitely, this first time seeing it over here. So I would suggest doing that yourself if it seems intriguing. But for my talk, which I've titled Between Convenience and Credibility, Student Trust in AI for Research. So this is going through a couple of ideas that I had in developing a little bit of my curriculum for one of the courses that I teach. So just as a real quick introduction, my name is Brian. You can call me Brian. I'm a social sciences student support and instruction librarian at the University at Buffalo, which is in Western New York. It is one of the flagship SUNYs of the whole consortium. And being part of a flagship university means that there's a lot of different types of expectations of our students. And also, we need to make sure that we're doing right by them as well. So part of that is they're going to be doing a lot of research because it is an R1 institution as well. So kind of just getting everybody up to speed based on what I'm doing and where I have implemented some sort of AI within my teaching practice. I teach a course called SSC 198 Research Reimagine. So part of our undergraduate curriculum asks our students and requires them to take two different classes. One of them is a Communication Literacy 1 class, which is an English writing and rhetoric course that a bunch of librarians and myself have had a presence in at our university ever since 2016. And then they also have to take a seminar, which is usually a 199. A 198 is the 1 credit version, and it is specifically for transfer students. Now, instead of being a 3 credit version where they're going to be doing some sort of research in a discipline, instead, they get 15 weeks of hanging out with me. And technically, this course is not part of my job duties. It is extra service, but it gives me an opportunity and a sandbox to really own my type of skills, my teaching practice, push it in different directions because I get to make the curriculum as long as I have it within the confines of some of the other pieces within acclimation to the UB community. So things about like their transfer credits, also making sure that they know how to find different places of support, study abroad program, tutoring, academic support services, so on and so forth. And my course structure, the way that I like to describe it is it's a low stakes, high reward type of environment, okay? Because if you fail my class, it's because you stopped showing up or you just completely ghosted or you didn't start from the beginning. I try to be as playful and as fun as I can be while still keeping things very professional. That's just the way that I do my teaching. That's the way that I feel students tend to stay more focused. So ultimately, what they're doing is they're practicing information literacy skills and different research skills while they're working towards a final project, which is going to be something multimodal, usually something like an infographic, a slides, a video, a podcast, something along those lines. And they get to choose whatever topic they want. So they have that type of ownership. Before we even get to that point, in week 2, the theme of the week is what is undergraduate research? And within this, I just go through slides, talk about how there are different opportunities where students can engage in research, maybe get internships, maybe get awards. And I use some real life examples of students that have done so and graduated while they were doing some sort of extracurricular research. Not that every student is ever going to do that. It just gives them an opportunity to see what other things are out there. So for week 2, for their activity and for their guided reflection, what I do is I give them a random topic and then I tell them explicitly, tell me what you're doing when you're finding background information here. Start your research process. Every research process looks similar, but yours might be different. You come into the university with a certain set of skills. I don't want to diminish those. I want to see where you start. And this is before we do any type of priming when it comes to how to do research effectively. So some examples of the topics, these are just a couple. We have things like people, Jim Henson. We have Mount St. Helens. We have Kodak, the camera company. We have tarot cards. We have elevator music. And we have Hans Gruber, the bad guy from Die Hard. Most of the topics that I come up with, they're just out of left field. I just want to see what they find. Sometimes they get a person, sometimes they get a place, sometimes they get a concept. Every semester I change them up a little bit. So this was just a smattering of about the 25 to 30 that were choices this time around. And then they answer guided questions as they're doing their research. And remember, they only get 10 to 15 minutes. We don't want them really digging deep. That's not what we're here for. And then tell me about 2 resources that they found helpful. So after they go through that, we do a little bit of coming back to the table for week 3. And then we talk about critical information literacy actually for week 3. And then week 4, we talk about AI. So explicitly putting them in an AI tool to see what happens. So they take their week 2 topic that they had no control over whatsoever, and then they're supposed to use the prompt that's on the screen. So essentially, they're going to create an annotated bibliography of 4 sources about whatever topic, and then 2 need to be popular, 2 scholarly, and 1 needs to be a video. So we're talking about conceptualization of the scholarly conversation as multimodal and maybe even complementary in nature. And then the annotations, 115 words, then complete a guided reflection, tell me about the process, copy and paste directly what they see. Now, in my syllabus, I say they're not allowed to use AI until they use this. And then after that, I don't want them using it just because it's hard to control. I think we kind of all understand that. And also, I kind of know that some students are going to continue to use it. So it's kind of policing it in a way where I'm giving them the strategies now so that maybe they see what's going to happen if they use it in a research context. So the questions that I ask are, first, did you feel like you were cheating the system? Second, did you think the assignment was harder because you had to check everything for accuracy? And then lastly, would you use AI for research purposes in the future? So over my 2 classes in the spring, so this just recent semester, I had 51 students that completed the assignment. And this is what happened. So did you feel like you cheated? Okay, so I looked at my data, and this is some of the stuff that kind of stood out to me. Somebody explicitly said, yeah, it made me feel like I was cheating. If anything, I feel cheated by ChatGPT. I didn't, though I don't think AI is good at pulling information directly on its own. I didn't feel like I was hacking the system. I feel like I screwed it up and therefore I feel guilty. So seeing their feelings, normally when I'm looking for data, I don't necessarily really look at the feelings, but I wanted to for this because I wanted to see what is the reason for them making them feel this way. Because peer pressure, their peers are probably using AI. They've been told it can work. I wanted to see what they thought. And then the second question, was it harder because of using AI? Essentially, some students said it felt like double work because they had to authenticate and make sure that things weren't fake or false, make sure that it was within context of their topic. Ultimately, the majority thought that it was a complementary tool that could work, but it wasn't some sort of a magic bullet or an elixir that's going to fix their research. And other people felt like it was useless and it was tiresome, and they really didn't want to use it in the future for research. So, as far as would they use it for research in the future, the overwhelming majority is maybe. They're not sure. My students were not sure because there's just some room that has to be done. Also, in their qualitative feedback, they said, I think I could use AI for other things, so maybe I can use it to do something similar, but not necessarily just straightforward research. Vehemently, 14 people said no. 3 people were unclear because I just generally did not understand what their responses meant. And then 10 said yes. So 10 of 51, I would suggest, are going to continue using AI for research in some way, shape, or form. As long as they're being ethical with it, not really a huge deal. As far as further discussion goes here, um, I'm curious about the different topics. Okay, so did the topics matter? So if somebody got a person versus a concept, or an older topic versus more modern things, did that make it a different experience for them? Is it because there wasn't information about it readily available? Did AI get confused? What tool did they use? They could use whatever they wanted. That's interesting. And I'm still going through the data, honestly, to see if there are any trends there. As far as accuracy of the results, if students got inaccurate or hallucinated results that were overwhelmingly unhelpful to them, did that sway them to feel like they don't want to use AI for research or at all going forward? That's interesting. I want to know because a lot of students do this exact assignment in other classes where they're building a full annotated bibliography and they just pop things into ChatGPT and say, cool, we're done. I was hoping that what this could show was, yeah, you can do that, but maybe not do that exclusively because of the harbingers and the problems that are along the way. And lastly, how can AI be leveraged? And these are things that I do talk about then in my class. How can you use it? Can you use it for brainstorming? Sure. Can you use it to build research questions? Absolutely. Are they going to be perfect research questions? Probably not. Are you able to go back and refix your prompt to make it so that it is more understanding of what you really need? Do you even know what you really need? These are all questions that are important. But the one thing that I do tell them to do is go there and build your citations, but then check them against a guide, Purdue OWL, or an in-house guide that I've created, and see what happens generally. So that is a terrible AI picture of me from like 2021. I discourage students from ever doing that, but it's creepy and weird, and I will show them this just to show that it is silly. But thank you. If you have any questions, I will answer them now. Also, here's my contact information, and I am working on a paper on this right now, and hopefully an IRB study in the future. Okay, so Jenny in the chat said, Brian, what are you getting the impression that students are feeling peer pressure? Did they discuss it in the class? Yes and no. Sometimes they do explicitly say, yes, I feel like everybody is using it, so I should probably use it too. Or somebody in their family uses it, or a friend. And it's just in the conversation. They see it in commercials, they see it all over the place. So yeah, I think that's where the peer pressure is coming from. Okay. Eric asks, have any students expressed feelings that communicate they feel like they need to know how to use AI tools because of their career aspirations? Yes, some of them do. I had one student this semester who was going into the medical field, and has an overwhelming feeling that AI is going to be used within that field a lot more than it is right now, and was doing specific research on that. So they felt like if they did not get up to snuff with it, then they would be behind once they got into their career field. As far as other things, I haven't seen anything specific yet. A lot of the students are within the social sciences, so I'm thinking more STEM might feel impacted by this, but that remains to be seen. But that's something that I will definitely look into in the future. And Anna, another question. Thanks for sharing your stats. Maybe I missed this part, but did you poll students based on their major or discipline? I found that students in the sciences are more pro AI research use than students in the humanities. No, I did not, but I can see what their major is within our back hub. So I can actually go and look at that data, and I probably will after this. So that is really awesome. Thank you so much for bringing that up. And I'm going to put my email in the chat. So feel free to reach out. Just tell me where you're from. Always looking to collaborate. And yeah, thank you very much.
Right, I'm going to ask one more question before we transition to Dawn. I just wonder, were there any tools besides ChatGPT that the students reported liking, or that they liked any more than any other?
Yes. So we have access to Copilot because we're a Microsoft campus. So a handful used Copilot because I said, hey, you have access to it. Give it a shot. Maybe it'll give you more stuff. Maybe it'll break down some barriers because it links automatically to our library resources, or it knows that it can. But I also saw Claude, I saw Gemini, and also DeepSeek. Um, Typically, the DeepSeek comes from international students, from what I've noticed. But those tend to be like the big 4 or 5.
Thank you so much for that wonderful presentation.
Of course, thank you.
All right, and our final one for today, welcome, Dawn.
Thanks, Nicole. I'm going to share my screen. All right, there we go. Hopefully you're seeing my slides and you're hearing me okay.
Looks good.
Great, thank you. I am the undergraduate research and instruction librarian at Penn State University Libraries at the University Park campus. Thank you all for staying on for my talk about incorporating AI literacy into library instruction. So I'll talk a little bit about what it is AI literacy in general. The focus will be on incorporating AI literacy in 2 library workshops that you may already be doing. You're invited to give a workshop on information literacy, and you're also asked to include AI. So some ideas for how to do that. Some tips for students on evaluating AI output, and a little bit about citing AI. There's lots of definitions of AI literacy out there. This is the one we've recently adopted at Penn State that's on our AI literacy website. It means understanding how AI works, when and when not to use it, how to engage with it thoughtfully, ethically, and responsibly. And there are also many AI literacy frameworks that was mentioned in our first lightning talk as well. These are the components of the one we've adopted at Penn State with these 4 aspects. When we're doing a library workshop and we want to include some AI literacy, we probably can't go into all these things. So I'm focusing on the critical evaluation, or the critical thinking and evaluation piece, which is in keeping with the kind of instruction that we often do that focuses on source evaluation and critical thinking. Just a couple of things to think about if you are asked to do a workshop for a class. At Penn State, we don't have sort of an overall AI policy. We have guidelines, but instructors may be using AI differently in their classes. So it's very important to understand what the expectations are, what the instructor has in place in terms of guidelines for that class. And if you're doing a workshop in 50 minutes, it's not a lot of time to cover everything, including AI. So we've had some luck with what could be called a flipped classroom approach. We've created a short video on searching using the library website, and we've had success with asking instructors to assign that to students ahead of time so they can watch that. Then hopefully they have an understanding of searching with the library website, and we don't have to spend a lot of time on that in class, and we have time to talk about some of the AI related topics that I'm going to mention. I like to start off my classes by asking this question: what is a credible source? As kind of a brainstorming activity. And the responses have changed somewhat with the advent of AI, as you will see when I show you the next slide. I have students respond to this on a Padlet. And I ask them to just give an example of a specific source or a type of source off the top of their head that they consider to be a credible source. So I'll show you an example of the Padlet. This is the whiteboard feature in Padlet. Students create a sticky tag with their response. I have everything else turned off on this so they can, because sometimes students like to draw on it in very creative ways. They create the sticky tag with their response. I work mostly with first-year students, and these were international students, which is why you see some of these international sources on here. You can see there's some very creative responses here. One student did say mom. So I did say that as a mom. I agree, moms are credible sources. But you can see that a student also said artificial intelligence. So I have started to see that as I've been doing this. So that generates a lot of food for conversation. We could probably spend the rest of the class talking about this, but it does get us as a class thinking about the idea of credibility. So I then asked the students to think about the criteria, like why did they select those sources? What are their criteria for evaluating sources? We have a guide, like most academic libraries, to evaluating sources on the library website that has these kind of traditional ways of approaching evaluation. Students come up with these and some other more creative ways of evaluating sources as we just kind of brainstorm this during class. But obviously some of these criteria don't apply to AI in the same way. You can't evaluate the authority of a source that really has no author, like a generative AI tool. So I have some tips for students about evaluating AI output. I just have a few slides that I show to look at some different aspects of evaluating and verifying AI output. Sometimes students don't think to prompt the AI tool again and ask for more specific information. If there's no source, ask for a source. There should always be a source, and you can ask the tool for a source. I like to remind them about fact checking using lateral reading and try to verify a fact. In other reputable sources, we've already talked about the idea of a reputable source, so hopefully that makes sense to them. Verifying sources. The idea of hallucinated sources is sometimes new to students that I work with. Hopefully they've watched the video we provided about how to search the library website using our search tool. They can try to track down a source to see if it's real. And to keep in mind that they need to find the source and verify that the sources support the claim they're supposed to support. This is an image I found in an article in Nature on hallucinated citations that I just show as a way to demonstrate how AI might pull different pieces together and make it look like a real citation, but this citation does not exist. So it's a good visual to make this point that they may not be aware of. And there's not a lot of time to go into talking about bias, but I do just like to remind them that AI output can be biased. And you can ask, again, prompt the tool to include diverse viewpoints to make sure that those missing perspectives are included. And I also like to remind them that your prompt itself can be biased, like my example here, which shows my bias as a cat person. My prompt, why do cats make better pets than dogs, is already making an assumption. And if I'm researching pets and pet ownership, I might want to think about a more neutral way to phrase that prompt. We have a guide, like I'm sure you all do, to citing AI. I just show them these examples and remind them that they can go to our guide to get more examples. They should also be sure that they're following the guidelines for their course. This is a link to our general generative AI guide that has a lot of this information, including the tips on evaluating and the guide to citation. I would love to hear any questions that you have. Hopefully we have a few minutes for that.
Yes, we've got about 4 minutes left, Dawn. I wonder if you could put that link, or if you have ready access, if you could put the link to your generative AI into the chat for everyone. Sorry to put the pressure on you if you don't have it.
Yes, I will do that. Yeah, and let me see if there were any questions or comments.
I think Karen had a comment about how Reddit is a big source for many AI sources. So if you're getting information from AI, you are in many ways getting it from Reddit. Yes.
Oh, that's a good point. Yes.
And Rose has just added a comment in the chat.
Yeah, I like that idea. I would like to do more with that, with prompt examples and the different ways that your output will change based on your prompt. And I think sometimes students just put in a prompt, but don't think about the ways that prompts are iterative. Yep.
Don, are there any prompt rubrics that you like the clear model or cast, that you especially think are useful?
Those are not things that I've used with students yet. Since generally it's just a very quick kind of touch on that topic, but I think some of those things would be very good. I mean, you could obviously do a whole workshop on prompts.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
This is just kind of to add it in as part of other things that we might be talking about related to AI and to information literacy. Yeah.
All right. Well, that brings us just to about time. I want to thank everyone. Please join me in thanking our lightning round participants today: Dawn, Brian, Bethany, Meredith. was lovely to hear everything you had to say. I learned a lot. Thank you for our participants for your thoughtful questions and your comments. I believe that all of this information, all of the slide information and contact information is available through the registration site. And so enjoy the rest of the Gale conference. I will now end the live stream and the webinar. Have a great day.